Hello and welcome to Grammar Aid, First Aid for Your Words. This video is part 1 in a 3-part series on pronoun case, in which we'll be focusing on some difficult to use pronouns like I versus me and who versus whom, and how to differentiate where and when to use each one. Now this can become a slightly complicated topic, and many writers struggle with it, so hopefully these videos can help to sort of demystify the whole process. Let's begin by taking a look at a very simple example. My dad and me took our pet iguana for a walk in the park. Now, most English speakers can spot the error in this sentence relatively easily. But in order to understand the principle behind it, let's take a look at the rule. Pronouns like I and who are known as nominative or subjective pronouns. We use them as subjects or to rename the subject of a sentence. Pronouns like me and whom are known as objective pronouns, and we use them as objects. And just to differentiate between the two, subjects perform the action of the verb, and objects receive the action of the verb. Let's go back to our example. My dad and me took our pet iguana for a walk in the park. So we have to begin by identifying the subject, and the easiest way to do that is to first isolate the verb. The verb is took. So now we have to ask who's performing the action of the verb. Who's doing the taking? And that's my dad and me. So therefore, that's the subject of our sentence. Now that we've identified the subject, hopefully you see the problem. Me is in the objective case, and it shouldn't be used in a subject, ever. So that's why we have to change it to my dad and I. And really a simple way of checking ourselves and of spotting this error and fixing it is to take out part of the subject and just leave the pronoun. Would you ever say, me took my pet iguana for a walk in the park? Probably not, unless you're Tarzan. So that's a nice simple way of spotting the error. So now with that said, let's take a look at a slightly more challenging example. My pet iguana dragged my dad and I into the lake. So once again, let's start by isolating the verb, and it's dragged. So who's performing the verb? Who is doing the dragging? That's my pet iguana. There's the subject. So if the iguana is the dragger, then who's the draggee? Who's receiving the verb? The answer to that is my dad and I. So that's going to be the object of this verb. Now, with that said, hopefully we can spot the error. I is a subjective pronoun. It shouldn't be used in the object. So we have to change it for that reason to my dad and me. And again, we can solve this problem by taking my dad out of the sentence, and we're left with, my pet iguana dragged I into the lake. Since you probably wouldn't say that, hopefully it makes it easier to choose your pronoun. Now, with that said, let's take a look at a slightly more complicated situation that involves questions. Now you see, questions are different because they change the order of subjects and verbs and objects around from what they would be in a declarative sentence. So let's take a look at an example. Who did my iguana bite? Now to identify the subject, let's begin by isolating the verb. And in this case, we have a verb phrase, which is did bite. So who's the biter? Who's doing the biting? And that, of course, is the iguana. That's the subject of our sentence. Now, who did the iguana bite? Who is receiving the action of the bite? What would be the object of this sentence? Someone is getting bitten by that iguana, and that someone is identified in this sentence with the pronoun who. That, therefore, is the object of the verb. Now, with that said, we can spot, if we remember our rule, that who does not belong in the objective part of the sentence. We need to use the objective case, whom did my iguana bite? Thank you for watching. Hopefully this video helped to clarify some things a little bit, and if it did, then a like is appreciated. Please also tune into part 2, where we'll be expanding on this topic a little bit. And also, if you're interested in seeing more grammar tutorials on different topics, or if you need serious editing assistance, please visit my website at www.grammaraid.com.